Good afternoon and welcome to the December 11th edition of Office Hours presented by the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. My name is Dr. Tisa Kennedy, and I thank you so much for joining me today. As always, I'm going to get started by telling you a bit about the center, our vision. I'll issue a quick disclaimer, and then we can get into some of the questions that have come up about student loans from our community. So, the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness was founded in 2021 with an ambitious vision for all college and career school students in the state of Maryland, and that's that they would be able to achieve these 6 pillars of collegiate financial wellness. Those are being creditworthy, ready, resilient, empowered, successful, and thriving. And if that sounds like a mission you'd like to know more about, or if you'd like to support, we could definitely use the support. You can visit us online at mccfw.org. And if you'd like to donate, we are a 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit organization, and you can make a donation at mccfw.org/support. Now, at the center, we have several programs ranging from FAFSA support to providing student loan repayment assistance, strategy assistance for people in various groups, as well as office hours. So I want to give a quick disclaimer before we get into office hours, because office hours is about very sensitive subject, and that is your personal student loan repayment strategy. The information that's presented during office hours today, and as always, is for informational purposes only. It does not constitute personal, legal, or financial advice. We do the best that we can with the information that we have available, but I've got to tell you, things have changed a lot in recent years, in recent months, and I actually just logged onto the Department of Education and a couple of news sites a few minutes before this broadcast started to make sure that I didn't miss anything. So all of that being said, you want to make sure that you look at your personal circumstances, your loans, stay in contact with your lenders, and use all of these sources of information to help you make the most informed decision possible. So thank you again for joining us, but just keep in mind that this information is not personal, legal, or financial advice. All right. So we have a little bit of space reserved for updates, and having just checked a few websites right before this broadcast started, there are no breaking news developments that I'm aware of in terms of student loans, repayment, or cancellation. We will definitely stay tuned, and if anything noteworthy comes up, we will definitely be sure to talk about it here on Office Hours. Now, we usually host Office Hours on the second and fourth Wednesday of each month. So today is the 11th. That will put us at being scheduled to come back on Christmas Day, and we're not going to do that. So we're going to be taking Christmas off and enjoying the holiday, and we will be back with Office Hours in January of 2025. In the meantime, if anything significant does happen before December 25th, we'll probably post something on social media about it, but not a full-fledged episode of Office Hours, because we're going to be enjoying the break ourselves and with our families and friends. All right, so with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the first question. Right, the question is, my loans are in default. Does that mean I cannot apply for public service loan forgiveness? When I called studentaid.gov, the representative shared that Fresh Start was over and expired a couple of months ago. So first, before we look at the answer, I just wanted to clarify the difference between being delinquent on your student loans and actually being in default. If a person is in default on federal student loans, that means that they have not made a payment for at least 270 days. So we're talking 9 months of missed payments before the loans are officially declared as in default. In recent years, loans have not been treated as if they are in default because of some of the pandemic era emergency provisions, including the Fresh Start initiative. Fresh Start ended, and the point of Fresh Start was to allow people to take advantage of a shorter process, an easier process to restore those defaulted loans to good standing and get them on track to benefit from programs like public service loan forgiveness and forgiveness by way of income-driven repayment. So let's go ahead and look at the answer for this borrower. So federal loans that are defaulted do not qualify for public service loan forgiveness. They'd have to come out of default in order to get on track. So there are a few routes that you can take to get out of default, and the steps to get out of default can be found at the link that's there on the page. We'll make sure that we put that in the comments of the video after this is annotated and uploaded to YouTube. But there are a few ways that you can get out of default. The first way that's presented on the Department of Education's website is to repay the debt in full 100%. This is obviously not practical for most people, so really the only options that you have are to rehabilitate the loans or to consolidate the loans. And if you rehabilitate the loans or consolidate them, we're talking about strictly doing this through the Department of Education, because they're federal student loans. And if you want to get them on track for federal student loan benefits, then you need to make sure that your loans stay federal student loans. The only way to do that is by going through studentaid.gov. Rehabilitation and consolidation are different paths to get out of default, but they vary in terms of how long it takes for that good standing to be restored. Rehabilitation, I believe, takes 9 to 10 months. I've helped someone through this successfully to get on track for public service loan forgiveness, but it was a long road because you have to make an agreement, you have to make payments. They could be very small payments, but you have to make payments for, I believe, 9 months before the loans are returned to good standing. With consolidation, if your defaulted loans are eligible for consolidation, that can move things along pretty faster, because with consolidation, the older loans that are in default will be paid off. So those debts will be satisfied. And then one new loan will be originated for the exact same amount. And that new loan has a new repayment clock. It has no default on it. And you would begin to make your progress toward public service loan forgiveness on that new non-defaulted loan. So it's unfortunate that this borrower missed the Fresh Start window, because Fresh Start was something that we used to help several people get out of default faster and get back on track and into good standing. And for some people, the difference has been that now their loans have been forgiven for PSLF by way of PSLF, or they're very, very close. And the Fresh Start is the only thing that made it possible for them to do that so quickly. So PSLF is still a possibility, but the loan has to come out of a defaulted status first so that it can continue to earn credit toward forgiveness by way of PSLF. All right, let's move on to our next question. That question is, I received several letters from Mohela. The amounts are different, the due dates are different, and the information conflicts. I'm so confused. What is happening? Let's go to the background on this, because I could speak from this personally, but we also have a few borrowers who are dealing with this as well. So I want to give my answer specifically for this borrower situation. McPhew is working with this borrower, and here's a bit of a backstory on what's happened so far. So this borrower consolidated their loans in April of 2024. However, they have federal loans and private loans. The conflicting information that they saw referred to both the federal loans and the private student loans. Their private student loans were moved from Navient to Mohela, and there are tiny nuances, differences between the loans that are federally held versus the private loans. I want to pause very quickly here to say that some of you who had loans with Navient, you should have seen those loans. If you didn't pay them off, you should have seen those loans transition to a new servicer, and Mohela is that servicer. The loans that were with Navient, from what we've seen so far, tend to be those privately held federal student loans. So a lot of people who have older FFELP loans saw those loans move from Navient to Mohela. But a lot of these borrowers also have direct loans or other types of student loans that have a different servicer. With some of the borrowers, what we're seeing is that all of their loans are serviced by Mohela. But what's happening is some of the loans are privately held, some of the loans are federally held, and some of the loans are outright private loans. And there's a difference between those three types. So for this person, their federal student loans have the servicer listed with an address in Missouri. The private loans list an address in Pennsylvania. If they want to access information about their federal student loans, they can go to mohela.studentaid.gov. If they're looking for information about the privately held loans or private loans, they would have to go to mohela.com. Also telling us that the account numbers are different. That lets you know that there are different loans involved. So let's go ahead and look at the answer. Okay, So Mohela is one name, but you may find yourself having two separate servicing experiences depending on the types of loans you have. For this particular borrower, Mohela is their servicer, but there are different, we call them sides to Mohela. So both sides of Mohela are servicing your student loans. These are separate loans, separate accounts, separate servicing agreements. It just happens to be under the name Mohela. It's very important for you to pay attention to the documents that are coming to you in the mail for slight differences that we've identified. And in at least one of those cases, the difference was not slight. We were looking at a borrower's loans on studentaid.gov, and when we looked at their loans on the Mohela platform, there was a $10,000 difference in the balance of the same loan. So there's sometimes the discrepancies can be small. There might be due dates that change. There might be repayment plans that don't look the same as they did the month prior. There could be a forbearance because of save for some of those loans. But you want to make sure that you are tracking this information so that you can keep a record of those changes, and also make sure that they're correct. And if they're not, that's when you want to reach out to the servicer, ask for clarification. And if you don't get anywhere with that, escalate it, or tap into the State Student Loan Ombudsman so that you can push toward resolution with a bit more support behind you. I just wanted to add this general note here. It's unrelated to this question, but sometimes people with private loans that Mohela services think that they have federal student loans because they know that Mohela is also a federal student loan servicer. But if you have both types, like federal and private loans, or even if you just have federal, you want to be very careful about consolidation, because if you take your federal student loans and consolidate them into a private loan, then those loans will lose access to all federal student loan benefits. So that means PSLF is no longer an option, income-driven repayment, the total and permanent disability discharge. There's so many things that will no longer be accessible once a loan crosses the line from being a federal student loan to truly a private student loan. A couple of the borrowers that I've seen, all of their loans are federal, but the ones that are held with inside of Mohela.com in that platform, those are privately held federal student loans. So they're not direct, they're not held by the federal government, but they're still federal loans. There's some cases where people have truly private loans that are held with Mohela, and they also have federal loans held with another servicer. And in some cases, they've taken these loans, consolidated them together with a private lender, and they've lost access to benefits like PSLF. So keep an eye out, be vigilant with keeping up with that paperwork, and make sure that you're checking for federal student loans, both studentaid.gov and mohela.studentaid.gov, to make sure that those discrepancies get resolved. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our next question. All right, this one's also about PSLF. It says, my employment certification form is not updating. I submitted a paper form in August and another one electronically last month. How long should I wait? I'm close to 120 and hoping for a buyback during the forbearance period. So let's go ahead and look at the answer. I want to issue some early congratulations to this borrower for being close to 120. I hope that you get there smoothly and as quickly as possible. Now, to find out what's happening with your employment certification form, you want to log on to studentaid.gov, because remember, PSLF progress is now tracked through studentaid.gov. It's no longer accessible through mohela.com or even mohela.studentaid.gov. So you want to go to studentaid.gov. And when I went to studentaid.gov, I was actually able to see my PSLF payment progress on the dashboard. So as soon as I got through the two-step verifications, my PSLF activity was right there where typically the FAFSA banner is. And it was listed, I believe, above that FAFSA banner. So I didn't have to look far. But for this borrower, they're looking for a status update on one of the employer certification forms that they sent. And there are a couple of ways that you can get there. So let's take a look at the next part of this answer. All right, so from the dashboard, you could have clicked view details, or on the right-hand side of that main My Aid page, there's a quick link section on the right-hand side, and track your PSLF progress as an option there. Once you get to the PSLF payment screen, you would then select employer certification. And once you get to that page, you can see all of the completed certifications that are on file for you, as well as the employment dates that are covered by all of those certification forms. The other thing you can do is when you log in and you get to that dashboard space, there's a section called My Activity. And if you don't see it there on that home page, you can go in the upper right corner where your name is and click on your name, and you'll see My Activity on a list, on a drop-down list. You can click My Activity and then you can take a look. In this case, you can see I have 2 PSLF forms, one that was in review and another one that has action required. And on the right-hand side, next to this little building icon, you'll see which employer they're talking about. You can click the link for the PSLF form that requires action, and you can see if your employer signed the form or if it is very close to expiring. When you send these electronic requests for PSLF employment verification, your employer has 60 days to complete the form, and it's sent to them to sign soon after you complete your part of the application, but they receive reminders as well that the employment verification is going to expire within a set number of days. So go to studentaid.gov, take a look at that activity and see if your form has been verified. I will say that in one case for me, there was a form that was received and the dates were showing as certified, but my payment count had not been updated to reflect that certification period in its entirety. But that issue resolved itself. It might have taken 3 or 4 weeks to do that, but My Activity is where you can find if your employer has signed your PSLF application. All right, let's move on to the next question. Oh, this is a long one. All right, it says, trying to buy back 43 months. Is this normal? Due to deferments, some that were requested while in school, some not. I've got 123 months of certified employment with only 78 qualifying payments. I see folks on here talking about buying back a few months to hit 120. So I just feel weird trying to buy almost 4 years worth. But honestly, at this point, I'll do whatever I can to get out. Is anyone else taking a similar approach with buying back a ton of months? All right, let's take a look at the background before we get into the answers. I do want to just tell this borrower, please don't feel weird. This buyback is new. And PSLF has an interesting history. So you may not be the only person who is attempting to buy back a significant amount of months. So this borrower has multiple deferments. And just a refresher on the payment count, 123 months of certified employment, 78 of those months are counting as qualified. What we need to do is get the periods that are currently not qualified converted into qualifying payments, if at all possible. So let's take a look at the answer. I know that I mentioned already that you should not feel weird. I know that that might be hard to accept, at least for now, but just keep in mind, PSLF had a 99% rejection rate prior to 2022. So there are a lot of people who have periods of repayment that could have been eligible for PSLF or should have been eligible for PSLF, but weren't for whatever reason. The PSLF buyback is talked about a lot for people who are close to 120, and it only works when you are at 120 or beyond it. But people think about it kind of like, well, yeah, maybe I can buy back a few months here or there, but there is no norm. This is something that's a new option. So I wouldn't look at that number of months needed and think, oh my goodness, like this is just so, astonishing, this figure. Like, how could I possibly buy back this many months? Don't look at it that way if you can help it. Just look at it like this is a program that was not administered as well as it could have been. And as a result, many people missed out on a lot of months. And now the buyback is an opportunity for you to recapture as much of that time as possible. So I want to give you the instructions from the Department of Education with a bit of paraphrasing in some cases, but this was pulled off of their website in the past day or two. The first step is to make sure that your employment certification is up to date. So if you have any unreported periods of qualifying employment, you want to make sure that you complete a fresh PSLF application online so that all of your employment can be verified. This is really important because the buyback only works for people who already have at least 120 months of qualifying employment. It will not work if you submit a request and you have less than 120 months of employment. The idea is to bring people who have the employment across the finish line if there are periods during that employment that were in a deferment or forbearance that can be converted. The second step is to see how the IDR adjustment provides PSLF credit. The IDR adjustment has been ongoing for a good while now, and we're supposed to hear something, I think, in the spring, in the summer, in the fall, and it's almost the end of the year. So hopefully we will hear something soon. We still hear that the adjustment is moving forward. And so we're expecting to see those results. But the IDR adjustment is so important because it's allowing previously ineligible periods of repayment to become eligible for both income-driven repayment forgiveness and for PSLF. But if you have been on top of your PSLF count and you know there's no other credit for you to earn, and you have the 120 months of qualifying employment, then you might not want to wait on the adjustment. So totally a matter of your choice here. The reason that the Department of Education encourages you to wait until updates have been made from the IDR adjustment is because the IDR adjustment itself is free. Everyone who has direct loans and federally held student loans will receive a payment count as a result of the adjustment, and that payment count is free. It'll just let you know where you are relative to those forgiveness milestones. However, the PSLF buyback can cost you, and we'll talk a bit about how much it can cost you when we finish up this answer. So let's take a look at the second part of the answer. The third step is to verify the months of deferments or forbearances that you want to buy back and confirm that you have approved qualifying employment for those months. So if you're looking at certain months where your loans were in a payment pause, certain types of deferments or forbearances, these are the months that are potentially up for grabs by way of the PSLF buyback, as long as you had qualifying employment during all of those months. The fourth step is to submit a PSLF reconsideration request. And using this language, this is pulled straight from the Department of Education. I have at least 120 months of approved qualifying employment, and I'm seeking PSLF or a TEPSLF discharge through the PSLF buyback. Please assess my eligibility for the PSLF buyback. And if the Department of Education finds that you are eligible for the buyback, they will send you what's called a buyback agreement. That agreement is going to let you know the amount that you would need to pay to repurchase those previously ineligible months. They'll also provide you with instructions to pay the full amount within 90 days of the email that they send to you with the buyback agreement. As for how much the buyback costs, the buyback is linked to income-driven repayment plans because those plans qualify for PSLF. So if you're already enrolled on an income-driven repayment plan, they would attempt to use the information that they already have on file for you to calculate how much you would have paid during those months that were spent in a forbearance or deferment. Then you would be responsible for making that payment, and after you pay, those previously ineligible months would convert into qualifying months for public service loan forgiveness. If you are not enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan, they'll give you the opportunity to provide information about your income. They'll let you know what you would have paid on an income-driven repayment plan for those periods, and you'll be responsible for making that payment to convert the months again from ineligible to eligible and qualifying. If you do not provide income information, I believe the payment that they assign to you is that of the 10-year standard plan. That's often more expensive than what people would have paid on an income-driven repayment plan. So if you're exploring the buyback, it's good to already be enrolled in an IDR plan. And if you're not enrolled in one, you just want to make sure that you provide that information to the Department of Education as quickly as possible so that they can let you know what the required payment would be in order for you to buy back those months and cross the finish line for PSLF. All right, let's take a look at the next question. Okay, it says, so confused regarding repayment plans. So last year, I called a PSLF representative and said I wanted to be in whatever plan had the lowest monthly payments and counted for PSLF. They put me on an extended graduated repayment plan. Now I am on the PSLF help tool updating my employment information, and it says this is not an IDR plan and I should apply for an IDR plan. Does it qualify under TEPSLF? Okay, so this is a great question. First thing first, I want to point out for anyone who's thinking about PSLF, the traditional version of PSLF. Under normal rules, which we're operating under after June 30th of this year, payments that are made in the extended graduated repayment plan would not count toward public service loan forgiveness. Through the IDR adjustment, some past payments can count. Through the limited waiver, payments made on the extended graduated plan could count. But under the normal rules of public service loan forgiveness, payments made on the extended graduated repayment plan do not count toward PSLF. Now, this borrower has brought up TEPSLF, which stands for Temporary Expanded Public Service Loan Forgiveness. Temporary Expanded Public Service Loan Forgiveness is another program that was created by Congress essentially to address the fact that the original public service loan forgiveness program had that rejection rate that was hovering between 98 and 99%. And just like its name, temporary expanded public service loan forgiveness is temporary. So let's take a look at the answer for details. All right. So as I mentioned, prior to July 1st, we were operating under this IDR adjustment where the rules were more lenient. So payments made on any repayment plan could count toward PSLF by way of the temporary waivers. Payments could also count toward TEPSLF because TEPSLF removes the requirement that you had to be making payments on a qualifying repayment plan for the entire 120 months. Now, after July 1st, if you want future months to count toward traditional PSLF or PSLF basic, then you would need to switch to an income-driven repayment plan for those future payments to count. You can still receive credit for payments that are made on other repayment plans, but that credit could be applied toward TEPSLF, not regular PSLF. The reason there's an asterisk there, though, is because TEPSLF isn't that simple. It did get rid of the requirement that you had to make payments on a qualifying repayment plan the whole time. However, there is a requirement for the last year of repayment, and that requirement is quoted here. It says the amount you paid 12 months prior to applying for TEPSLF and the last payment you made before applying for TEPSLF must be at least as much as you would have paid under an income-driven repayment plan. Now, essentially, this means that in the last year of repayment, they're going to be looking to see if the payments that you made at the start of that year and at the end of that year were at least what you would have paid under an income-driven plan. This can get tricky. So to stay safe, what most people do is just switch over to an income-driven repayment plan, because that way they can ensure that for that entire last year, they are meeting this final requirement for TEPSLF. So just keep in mind, if you want to go the TEPSLF route, then your payments on the extended graduated repayment plan would be acceptable up until that final year as you're approaching 120. Also, keep in mind that TEPSLF is temporary. The temporary is actually in the name, Temporary Expanded Public Service Loan Forgiveness. This program doesn't have a set date where it will end. Instead, it was created with an allocation of funding. And once that funding is exhausted, the program will disappear. So this is where you really have to think about how close you are to reaching 120. If you are, say, 5 months away, then maybe you want to chance it, on going the TEPSLF route. But if you are 5 years away, we don't know if TEPSLF is still going to be here 5 years from now. So if you're going that route, as always, be strategic about it and just know that there is that extra requirement there for the last 12 months of repayment. You want to make sure that you're meeting all the requirements to get to forgiveness as fast as you possibly can. All right, let's take a look at the next question. Okay, it says, I received a bill for a student loan that defaulted for 5 years. I have never heard of this servicer. Should I make this payment? This is something that we have been seeing a lot in recent months. We've had a couple of people who are seeing notes that they need to make payments on a federal student loan that defaulted, 10, 15 years ago. In one case, we have someone who's seen a student loan that went into default in 1977, and they hadn't heard anything about this loan for years, and then they received something in the mail earlier this year. And so I want to give you the same advice that I gave them. And the answer is, don't pay something until you know exactly who owns the debt. It's possible that it could be a legitimate debt, but that doesn't mean that just because you receive something in the mail to say, you owe this money, pay it now, or else. Do not pay that debt without doing your digging, basically, to make sure that the party who's reaching out to you is the party that has a legitimate claim to that debt, and you want to make sure that the debt itself is legitimate. So let's take a look at the full answer to this question. So just to reiterate, we do not recommend paying for anything until you know more information about it. If it's a federal student loan, you want to go to studentaid.gov. And if you're unable to get in, it could be because you have a loan like that one that defaulted in 1977, and you need to set up an account or recover an account that is old. If you are able to log in and get past all the two-step verification process, you'll land at a place called the dashboard. On the dashboard, if you have federal student loans, you will see a blue circle. And inside of that blue circle, you will see a dollar amount. So if you see any dollar amount listed within that blue circle, that means that you have federal student loans. From there, you can click on the View Details button to learn more about the loans as well as the servicers. Now, for some people, these could be private student loans. So the best place to go to view all of your student loans would be your credit report. You'll be able to see federal student loans there and private student loans. And if there are any collections agencies that are involved, or if debt has been transferred from one party to another, this could help you locate who actually owns this debt at this point, because the entity that owns the debt is the only entity that you should be sending a payment to. You don't want to send payment to someone that knows about the debt, or maybe had the debt before but doesn't have a claim to it now, but just sends you a message to scare you into paying. Because if you send them money, chances are you're not going to get that money back if you find out that they don't have a legitimate claim to the debt after you've paid them. So you can go plenty of places to get your credit report, but we've listed here a free site, which is annualcreditreport.com. And again, you want to take a look at those loans, put together the trail to find out if the party that's been, sending you this correspondence to make payment is indeed the party that owns the debt. And if the debt is federal, you should be able to see it in studentaid.gov. You should be able to see that it's defaulted, and you should see who the servicer is that holds that defaulted debt. All right, let's move on to the next question. All right, this one is, I've been making extra student loan payments, and I thought the extra payments automatically went toward the principal. How can I allocate my payments to make sure that that happens? All right, this is going to be a long answer. I want to start the answer by saying that when you send extra payments into your servicer, you need to designate where you want those payments to go. But in the case of federal student loans, extra payments do not go toward principal first. They would go toward principal if there was no outstanding interest on a loan at the time that you made that extra payment. But let's take a look at this answer in detail. Okay, so the payments are applied to penalties, fees, interest, and then principal. But you might see that you have different options depending on when you go to make that extra payment. If there's no payment due at the time you go to make an online payment, your servicer portal should allow you to indicate exactly how you want that extra payment to be allocated. So let's take a look at what that looks like. In this example that I'm showing you on the next screen is actually from Mohela. And this is what you see if you go to make a payment at a time when there's no payment due. So when there's no payment due, you have all these options as for how you want to allocate your payment across each loan. You can allocate it to the loan that has the highest interest rate. You can allocate it to the loan that has the highest current balance. If you want to use the snowball method, where you pay off smaller debts first, you might want to apply that payment to the loan that has the lowest current balance. You have plenty of options here, but these options seem to only present themselves if you go to make the payment at a time when you have no payment due. That's a true, I guess I don't want to say true, but this is like when there's no payment due, it's easy to tell that you're overpaying because you're making a payment at a time when a payment is not required. Now, if you take a look at the options that are available to you during a time when a payment is due, you'll see that the screens are different. And the screenshot that you're seeing right now with all of these options compared to the screenshot you're about to see, these pictures were taken one day apart. Okay, so let's go to the next screenshot so you can see the options that are available to you when you are overpaying when a payment is due. So now we don't have all of those columns there about paying toward the loan with the highest interest rate or paying toward the loan with the highest current balance. Now you see the two loans, you see the amount that's due. Now you can go ahead and where it says pay this amount, you can change that amount to something that's higher than the amount that's actually due. So $234.11 is due. You could then say, I want to pay $300. And if you choose this allocate, auto allocate option, once you put in the amount you want to pay, the website is going to do, their auto allocation math, and they'll decide how much is going to go toward each loan. So this is the auto allocate option. There's another option where you can specify by loan how much you want to pay. So let's take a look at that screenshot. Okay, so here you can see another column has been added. You've got the amount due, which is still the same, but then on the right-hand side, you've got payment amount. And now it's up to you to go there and put in how much you want to pay toward each of those loans. Keep in mind, the amount that's due is $234.11. So whatever you pay needs to be at least $234.11 by the end of this cycle in order to make sure the loan stays in good standing. But hopefully this gives you a better picture of all the options that you have and when you have those options, because things look different depending on when you log in to make that extra payment. All right, let's take a look at the next question. Okay, this is shifting gears a bit. This is about the FAFSA. It says, my stepson still lives with me after separation from his mother. I'm not sure how to handle it. Can I use my income for his FAFSA, or do I need to use his parents' income? Okay, let's take a look at the background for this question before we go on to the answer. Okay, so the marriage ended years ago, and the stepfather and the student's mother are not divorced. The student's mother and the stepfather lived together after they were separated, but they currently do not live together. So let's take a look at the answer for this question. So we have another question, and that's for this step parent. How do you file your taxes? Do you file them with the student's mother as married filing separately, or do you file jointly with the student's mother? For the FAFSA, step parents cannot be the only contributor unless they have legally adopted the student. So there's the answer to your question. Now, sometimes it's very confusing trying to figure out who has to contribute their information for the FAFSA. And the Department of Education actually has something of a tool. I can't remember the exact name, but it's like a who qualifies as a parent wizard or something like that. I know it involves the word wizard, but it helps you figure out who is actually considered a parent for the purposes of completing the FAFSA. So for FAFSA purposes, a parent is a legal parent, and that includes a biological parent, an adoptive parent, or a person that the state has determined to be the student's parent. For example, when a state allows another person's name to be listed as a parent on a birth certificate. Other relatives, such as your grandparents or foster parents, legal guardians, older brothers or sisters, widowed step-parents, and aunts and uncles are not considered parents unless they have legally adopted the student. So I hope this answers this parent's question. All right, let's move on to the next question. Okay, this says, this is my first time filing a FAFSA. I just completed my 2025-26 FAFSA and I'm confused about this negative 1,500. What does it mean? You know, this is a super popular number. I think this is like the third time that that specific number has come up in office hours. So a lot of people are seeing that negative 1,500. And let's take a look at the answer so we can let you know exactly what that means. The negative 1,500 is not a dollar amount. It's a number that's called your student aid index. It's calculated with a formula, and it ranges from negative 1,500 to 999,999. But remember, these are not dollars. The SAI falls within a range that helps your school determine how much financial aid support you may need. So this SAI uses information, or the calculation of the SAI uses information from your FAFSA. That's what you contributed, as well as your contributors, the information that they've added. And then the financial aid office of your institution uses that SAI to create a financial aid offer for you. Now, what does negative 1,500 mean? That's the lowest possible SAI that you can have. Any SAI that's negative indicates that you have a higher level of financial need. So if you have an SAI of a negative 1,500, that means that you would qualify for a maximum Pell Grant award. Pell Grant is a federal grant that does not have to be repaid, but it's need-based. So you have to have need in order to be eligible for it. So with an SAI of negative 1,500, you would qualify for the maximum Pell Grant award as long as you have not exhausted your lifetime amounts and you meet all other student eligibility requirements for federal student aid. All right, let's move on to our next question. Okay, this is also a FAFSA question. It says, I'm unable to invite my parents to the 2025-26 FAFSA. What's wrong? Why does it keep telling me unable to complete this action? All right, let's take a look at what this looks like within the FAFSA. So let's go to some background first. So you'll notice here on this FAFSA screen at the very top, you see these 5 steps that are there. And then you see that red bar that says unable to complete this action. For this student, we've got a little bit of background. The first is that the parent does not have a social security number. Second is that the student does have a social security number. Now let's take a look at the answer. All right, so we've been hearing a lot about this, this instance, and in some cases it gets resolved by just giving it some time. So I wish we had like a textbook fix for you, but the 25-26 FAFSA has only been out, I think, a little bit less than a month. So we're watching, we're learning, just like many of you are, but give it some time and hopefully the issue will resolve itself. Please keep checking, keep trying, and hopefully the issue will resolve itself. And if we do learn of a fix for this, we will most certainly update you on steps to make sure that this is not an issue going forward. All right, I think that does it for our questions. So we're going to wrap things up sharing a resource, and that is the Maryland Student Loan Ombudsman. And before I get into the Student Loan Ombudsman, I'm just taking a look at Instagram really quickly, and I saw that MHEC, that's the Maryland Higher Education, is watching this live video. We thank you so much for joining us. MHEC is the Maryland Higher Education Commission. MHEC has millions of dollars in state aid for Maryland residents. So make sure that you complete that FAFSA as soon as possible, because MHEC actually uses the information from your FAFSA to determine your eligibility for state aid programs, which could include grants and scholarships that really are significant and can help you avoid student loans and just give you a little bit more assistance to pay for your higher educational costs. So we thank MHEC and their outreach team for joining us for office hours today. Now we'll get to another state resource, and that is the Maryland Student Loan Ombudsman. Maryland is a state that has a dedicated student loan ombudsman that can help borrowers who are experiencing problems with their servicers. The list of issues that the ombudsman can assist you with include failure by the servicer to communicate with the borrower, errors in crediting principal and interest payments, misapplied payments, inaccurate interest rate calculations, billing errors, loan consolidations or modifications errors, and or inappropriate collection activity or tactics. You can visit the Student Loan Ombudsman online. Their website is a part of the state's Department of Labor. You can see the image there, and the web address is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So if you have an issue with your servicer and you have reached out to them in an attempt to resolve the issue and you're just finding that you're not getting anywhere, then I would strongly encourage you to engage a third party to help you advocate for yourself. And the Student Loan Ombudsman is a great resource for residents of the state of Maryland. All right, I'm taking a look back at social media again. I don't see any comments or questions. I'm going to take one more peek. Thank you so much again. I see 1920s underscore. I know I'm saying this wrong. I don't know if it's Strivers Road.flow joined us. Thank you for joining us again. We appreciate you being here with us. I also see Ina underscore Enu89. Thank you so much, Ina, for joining us today for this edition of Office Hours. We appreciate you. All right, if we don't have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and prepare to close out the broadcast. I can't believe that we are in December of 2024 already. That means that I think we did every edition of Office Hours this year. We might have missed one, but this makes at least 22 more of our free virtual student debt clinics. That's Office Hours. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and thank everyone who's joined us at any edition of Office Hours since we launched this program exactly 3 years ago. That was late 2021. The time is just flying by. Anyway, thank you so much for your support, for joining us as we close out the year. I'm just really thankful for all we've been able to do, and also for the borrowers who have been able to take this information from Office Hours, apply it along with their personal preferences, job circumstances, all of that. They've been able to apply this knowledge and secure some really huge victories. We've had people who have had one person had, I think, $50,000 or $60,000 wiped out after following the steps that were given from one of our Office Hours broadcasts. We had another one who had more than $200,000 of debt erased because he watched Office Hours, followed the steps, consolidated loans, and applied for public service loan forgiveness. Everyone's situation is different, but when you have solid information, you have awareness of your loan portfolio, and you also know yourself and your household characteristics, you can put all of that information together. You can make an informed decision, and the steps that you take could end up reaping some huge rewards. So we're happy to be a part of that journey. And if you have experienced such a victory or any kind of success with applying the information that you've learned during Office Hours, please do reach out and let us know. It's just more fuel for the fire. And we also want to celebrate with you. So thank you again for your support. I don't think we have any additional announcements. And as I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, our next edition would normally be scheduled for 2 weeks from now, which places us on December 25th, which is Christmas Day. And we will not host a broadcast that day. We will see you in the new year. Dates will be announced soon. In the meantime, if you're a current student, I wish you much success with your finals. Some of you are going to be graduating this winter. Congratulations to you all. For those of you who are prospective students, make sure you get on that FAFSA. It's studentaid.gov as soon as possible. For all of our friends who are working in higher ed, whether it's financial aid officers, faculty members, administrators, executives, thank you so much for your engagement and your support. And we are so looking forward to continuing on this journey toward collegiate financial wellness with you in 2025 and beyond. Until next time, be well.